U.S. officials are concerned that Iran may have seized an oil tanker belonging to the United Arab Emirates while the Panama flagship was traveling through the Strait of Hormuz just 2 days ago when it was stopped in Iranian waters. But the ship's transponder was switched off. It has not been located since, and this comes just days after the U.K. said that Iranian naval forces tried to seize a British tanker traveling through the same strait. Iran has denied involvement in these incidents, but Tehran has vowed to retaliate against Britain after an Iranian oil tanker was seized off the coast of Gibraltar earlier this month. At least 6 vessels have now been attacked near the Strait of Hormuz since May, with Washington and Tehran pointing blame at each other. Amy Myers Jaffe with the Council on Foreign Relations has an article out, and it addresses the geopolitical and the power struggles in this vital passage. Amy joins me now from Westport, Connecticut. Amy is, of course, the director of the program on energy security and climate change at CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. So, Amy, 6 vessels in the last 6 months that have been attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. Does all the blame go to Iran?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious it's Iran. If you look at the different targets, the vessel you mentioned that the Iranians are objecting to the British seizing, they seized that cargo because it was going to smuggle Iranian oil illegally to Europe. Some of the other targets were very strategic and really would have sent a strong signal, whether it's the port of Fujairah, which is where some of the U.S. Gulf Arab Emirates store oil to be used to send to Europe and the United States and Asia, or whether it's been, specific tankers. It really does have sort of the fingerprint markings of Iran trying to send a strategic message.
You wrote an article for CFR that caught our attention, and in there you note that after the G20 summit last month, there wasn't a joint statement on how to protect freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Why is that so significant? And why do you think there's so much inaction on this issue amongst world leaders when it comes to oil security right now?
Well, I think the really interesting question, of course, a fifth of the oil that's going through the Strait of Hormuz is going to China. And their economy is much more dependent on oil from the Middle East than, say, the United States today, or even the European countries. So it is really very surprising that with all the deliberations at the G20 and with China claiming to want to be a global power, that they have not actually stepped up to the table to take any responsibility or make any statements on this issue, other than simply saying that a war in the Middle East would be destabilizing, which, of course, we all know.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it is that China's been sort of quiet on this issue?
Well, I think it's very complicated for China. I like to remind people that back when this problem first started, it was China that provided a lot of assistance and nuclear assistance to Iran in the first place. So when they say that somehow the United States is escalating, we need to remember how did this start? And then the second thing is, they're just not, I don't think, accustomed to being on the global stage in the way the United States takes a primary role. We take a primary role in protecting the sea lanes. We police international freedom of navigation, both in the air and in the seas. And so they're sort of free riding off the United States. And I think probably the Trump administration has made that point in a tactful way, and continues to try to get assistance from the Chinese.
So as tensions continue to escalate between the U.S. and Iran, you've got these sanctions that the U.S. has pushed forward. You've got Iran sort of pushing back in the Strait of Hormuz. What countries do you believe really have the most to lose over this issue there?
Well, I think really it's most critical for China, India, Japan. I mean, a lot of this oil goes to Asia today, and those economies are much more exposed. When you look at the U.S. economy now, we produce a lot of our own oil and gas. We're an exporter now of oil and gas. And also we're moving to, more renewable energy. And of course, some of that's in the electricity sector, but they still use oil to generate electricity in some countries in Asia. So they're more exposed than we are. And so I do think it's important for these international forums to really address this issue and not see it just as a United States issue. This is a global issue. And I think that point was made at the G20, but it was not, it didn't rise to the level that you would expect of all the world leaders sort of agreeing and making statements. And I think part of that is sort of indicative of the fact that people are more relaxed about oil today in a country like China they're trying to push electric cars and alternative cars. And so you've got Japan gearing up for the Olympics by trying to show that they're going to have hydrogen use in vehicles. And so we're kind of in a changed world. I really feel like a decade ago, having the Iranians interrupt so much shipping in the Strait of Hormuz really would have caused a much higher increase in the price of oil.
Yeah, no, I was actually very surprised, but you made a great point about the electric cars and the shift here. I want to thank you very much, Amy Myers Jaffe, for joining us, and thank you for your time, Amy.
Thank you very much for having me.